For 39 chapters, three righteous men defended God. They never wavered. They insisted his justice was perfect, his judgments beyond question, and that their shattered friend, sitting in the ashes, must somehow deserve what happened to him. Then God appeared, and he turns on them. The text gives no warning. One moment, the storm is still battering Job. The next, the voice pivots to Eliphaz, the eldest of the three, and what it says detonates everything the friends believed, and everything most readers think this book is about. My anger burns against you and your two friends, for you have not spoken the truth about me as my servant Job has. Read that again, because it is one of the most shocking verses in the entire Bible. The men who defended God's perfect justice, God declares them liars. And the man who stood in the ashes and accused God to his face of twisting his judgment, the man who said, "I cry out violence and no one answers," that man, God says, spoke the truth. The defenders are condemned. The accuser is vindicated by God himself. And the anger here is not a passing irritation. The text uses the Bible's term for the divine fury that levels cities. God orders the three to take 7 bulls and 7 rams and bring them as offerings, the kind of sacrifice reserved for grave national sins. And then he adds the most exquisite twist of all. Their offering alone will not save them. They must go to Job, the man they tormented, the man they accused of stripping widows and crushing orphans, and ask him to pray for them. Only his prayer will hold back what is coming to them. The verdict makes the wounded man the priest, and his prosecutors the supplicants kneeling at the edge of his ash heap. Job prays for them. After everything, he prays for them. A good man. And then comes the ending everyone knows, the ending that has comforted readers for 2,500 years. God restores Job's fortunes. Double, the text says, twice the sheep, twice the camels, twice everything. 7 new sons and 3 new daughters are born to him, and his daughters are the most beautiful in all the land. He lives 140 more years. He sees 4 generations, his great-great-grandchildren playing at his feet, and he dies old and full of days. A happy ending, the wound closed, the faith rewarded. But viewer, stay a moment longer, because the author has hidden 3 blades inside this happy ending. The first, count what was returned. The sheep, doubled. The camels, doubled. The oxen and donkeys, doubled. The children, not doubled. 10 died, 10 were born. Because the author knows what every bereaved parent knows. Livestock can be replaced. Children cannot. 10 new children do not return the 10 in the ground. The arithmetic of the ending quietly refuses to pretend otherwise. The second blade is a single phrase most readers skim past. When Job's brothers and sisters come to eat with him, the text says they comforted him, and listen to the exact words, "for all the evil that the Lord had brought upon him." Not the evil Satan brought, not the evil that befell him. The Bible's own closing narration states in plain words who did this. The book ends the way it began, with the responsibility in heaven. And the third blade is the deepest. Everything God restored was material, property, health, years, family. But one thing is never restored, because it cannot be, and the book is honest enough never to claim it was. Nowhere in the ending does it say that Job's faith came back. The man who once offered sacrifices in case his children had sinned in their thoughts, that man, that perfect, unquestioning believer, died on the ash heap. What stood up from it was someone else, a man who still believed in God's infinite power, who had heard the storm and never doubted who commands the lightning, but who now knew that power and justice are not the same thing. And this, perhaps, is the most haunting insight in the whole book. The wager in heaven was won. Job never cursed God. But look at what the victory cost. God could double the flocks. He could give back the years. The one thing the Almighty could not do was buy back the simple, unbroken faith of the greatest believer he ever had. Satan lost the bet, but heaven did not win. One question remains, the largest of all. Who wrote this? Who had the courage to put God on trial inside God's own book? Tomorrow, we'll try to find out.